Welcome to the third season of the Milwaukie Poetry Series.
Yeah.
Thank you. We are very excited about it. The library board is excited about it. We're very excited about the lineup that we have this year. So thank you very much for your support. Thank you very much for being here. I want to thank the city of Milwaukie, without which support we would not have the series as we do. So a big thanks to the city of Milwaukie. I've been looking forward to this reading tonight. It's a pleasure for me to introduce John, who will be kicking off the third season of the Milwaukie Poetry Series. John received his MFA from the University of Alabama and received the 2004 C. Hamilton Bailey Poetry Fellowship from Literary Arts. His poetry has appeared broadly in numerous publications. His book, Heaven of the Moment, won the Gorsland Poetry Competition and was a finalist for the 2008 Oregon Book Award in Poetry. John's poem, 100 Years Ago, was nominated for a Pushcart Prize. He has taught poetry at the University of Alabama and Washington State University. He currently teaches for the Literary Arts Writers in the Schools program, the Attic Workshop, and Portland Community College. Another thing that I've learned in getting acquainted with John and preparing for the reading tonight is that there is a wrestler who has the same name as John, also named John Morrison, who is a WWE superstar. And our John told me that his ring name is Johnny Nitro. Would you join me in welcoming our poet reader for this evening, John Morrison. John.
Thank you. I brought a bunch of stuff. My father was a wrestler. You guys keep that up. You're not going to be able to tell when I'm telling the truth. The 1945 98-pound Oregon State high school wrestling champ.
90 pounds?
98.
98.
And his name is John Morrison. His name is also John Morrison. So I wanted to thank you all for coming. I want to thank the Milwaukie Poetry Series and the committee. And I know you guys do a lot of hard work and you do a wonderful job. I've been to several of these readings, and it's a great room. And there's great warmth in the room. So thank you. Thank you to the committee, and thank you to all of you for coming. And Tom just blew my whole sequence, because now I'm going to have to read the poem called The John Morrisons. An ordinary name, John Morrison. We lived outside of town, and in the next orchard valley was their John Morrison, a farm boy my age, a fond acquaintance in flannel jeans and scuffed work boots. At school, we greeted with a hail, "Hello, John Morrison." Your city may have several John Morrisons, all devoted to a quiet duty. In fact, my fellows won't be pleased with this note. They'll think, John Morrison has gone a little too far. Brothers, patience. Everyone knows we're here. If someone doesn't know you, then bet they know me, and likely both of us. John Morrison friend, John Morrison mathematician, plumber, deputy. John Morrison who stutters and sings, first up to deep fry the French crullers, last awake to mop the hospital floor. With rough skin or pale, eyes or obnoxious click of the tongue when the light turns green. We are leaven among the less common. But the era of John Morrison nears an end. Whatever called our order into being now disbands us one by one. A John Morrison passes, and we, somber, pick up and add our brother's burden to our own. Ministry at end, the last will leave, and you may remember John Morrison, like a dusting of November snow. I don't know what these notes are, and you better hope I don't need them.
They foreshadow the November snow.
This was supposed to be the first poem. Tom goes, John, you can do anything you want. It's your reading. Nazim Hikmet. Hello, everybody. Nazim, what happiness that open and confident you could say hello from the bottom of your heart. The year is 1940. The month, July. The day is the first Thursday of the month. The hour, 9. Date all your letters in detail like this. We're living in such a world that the month, the day, and the hour contain more writing than the thickest book. Hello, everybody. To say a big fat hello and then without finishing my sentence, to look at you with a smile, sly and gleeful and wink. We're such perfect friends that we understand each other without words or writing. Hello, everybody. Hello to all of you. Okay. Thank you. I'm not sure when I'll need that. This is the book I read from. Okay. We all know Federico Lorca, or I think we do. This was another fellow who did not survive the Spanish Civil War, Miguel Hernandez. I have plenty of heart. Today I don't know how. Today, all I am ready for is suffering. Today, I have no friends. Today, the only thing I have is the desire to rip out my heart by the roots and stick it underneath a shoe. Today, that dry thorn is growing strong again. Today is a day of crying in my kingdom. Depression unloads today in my chest a depressed heavy metal. Today, my destiny is too much for me. And I'm looking for death down by my hands, looking at knives with affection, and I remember that friendly axe. And all I think about is the tallest steeples and making a fatal leap serenely. If it weren't for I don't know what, my heart would write a suicide note, a note I carry hidden there. I would make an inkwell out of my heart, a fountain of syllables, and goodbyes and gifts, and get lost, I'd say to the world. I was born under a rotten star. My grief is that I have only one grief, and it weighs more than all the joys together. A love affair has left me with arms hanging down, and I can't lift them anymore. Don't you see how disillusioned my mouth is? How unsatisfied my eyes are? The more I look inward, the more I mourn. Cut off this pain? Who has the scissors? Yesterday, tomorrow, today, suffering for everything. My heart is a sad goldfish bowl, a pen of dying nightingales. I have plenty of heart. Today, to rip out my heart, I who have a bigger heart than anyone, and having that, I'm the bitterest also. I don't know why. I don't know how or why I let my life keep going on every day. Now I'm lost again. I'm having a great time. Thank you. Gerald Stern. You want to know what's next, don't you?
I do.
I remember Galileo describing the mind as a piece of paper blown around by the wind. And I loved the sight of it sticking to a tree or jumping into the back seat of a car. And for years, I watched paper leap through my cities. But yesterday, I saw the mind was a squirrel caught crossing Route 80 between the wheels of a giant truck, dancing back and forth like a thin leaf or a frightened string, for only 2 seconds living on the white concrete before he got away, his life shortened by all that terror, his head jerking, his yellow teeth ground down to dust. It was the speed of the squirrel and his lowness to the ground, his great purpose and the alertness of his dancing that showed me the difference between him and paper. Paper will do in theory when there's time to sit back in a metal chair and watch the shadows. But for this life, I need a squirrel, his clawed feet spread, his whole soul quivering, his clawed, the hot wind rushing through his hair, the loud noise shaking him from head to tail. O philosophical mind, O mind of paper, I need a squirrel finishing his wild dash across the highway, rushing up to his green, ungoverned hillside. Okay. 2 more of those. This one's a little longer. It's in sections. They're not long sections. That John Morrison, who was a wrestling champion, I read him this poem, and he told me what it's about on the first hearing, and I was like, what? How do you know that? From Two Citizens by James Wright. Ars Poetica, some recent criticism. It's in 7 parts? 7 sections. A lot of them are short. 1. I loved my country when I was a little boy. Agnes is my aunt, and she doesn't even know if I love anything on this God's green little apple. I have no idea why Uncle Sherman, who is dead, fell in with her. He wasn't all that drunk. He longed all life long to open a package store, and he never did anything, but he fell in with Agnes. She is no more to me than my mind is, which I bless. She was a homely woman, in the snow, alone. Sherman sang bad, but he could sing. I too have fallen in with a luminous woman. There must be something. The only bright thing Agnes ever did that I know of was to get hurt and angry. When Sherman met my other uncle, Emerson Buchanan, who thinks he is not dead, at the wedding of Agnes, Uncle Emerson smirked, "What's the use of buying a cow when you can get the milk free?" She didn't get mad. She didn't weep. She got mad. Mad means something. You guys are making fun out of me. 2. She stank. Her house stank. I went down to see Uncle Sherman one evening. I had a lonely furlough out of the army. He must have been one of those heroes of love because he lay down with my Aunt Agnes twice at least. Listen, lay down there. Even when she went crazy, she wept 2 weeping daughters, but she did not cry. I think she was too lonely to weep for herself. 3. I gather my Aunt Agnes into my veins. I could tell you, if you have read this far, that the nut house in Cambridge where Agnes is dying is no more Harvard than you could ever be. And I want to gather you back to my Ohio. You could understand Aunt Agnes, sick, her eyes blackened, her one love dead. 4. Why do I care for her, that slob, so fat and stupid? One afternoon at Etnaville, Ohio, a broken goat escaped from a carnival, one of the hooch dances they used to hold down by the river. Scrawny, the goat panicked down Agnes's alley, which is my country, if you haven't noticed. America, which I loved when I was young. 5. The goat ran down the alley, and many boys giggled while they tried to stone our fellow goat to death. And my Aunt Agnes, who stank and lied, threw stones back to the boys and gathered the goat, nuts as she was, into her sloppy arms. 6. Reader, we had a lovely language, but we would not listen. I don't believe in your God. I don't believe my Aunt Agnes is a saint. I don't believe the little boys who stoned the poor son of a bitch goat are charming Tom Sawyers. I don't believe in the goat either. 7. When I was a boy, I loved my country. Ensi petit placidum, sub literati quiatum. Hell, I ain't got nothing. Ah, you bastards, how I hate you.
What did John Morrison say?
Oh, my dad?
Oh,
My father.
Oh, it wasn't the wrestler?
My father's a wrestler.
Okay.
When I read the poem to my father, he said, Agnes is the country. Don't you know how to read a metaphor? No, he didn't say the last part, but that's what he was saying. Okay, I just want... This is my... Aunt Agnes and I have a lot in common. I wanted to end on a different... this series of poems on a different one. Barbara Ross, Bite Every Sorrow. This poem is, you can't have it all. You can't have it all. But you can have the fig tree and its fat leaves like clown hands gloved with green. You can have the touch of a single 11-year-old finger on your cheek, waking at 1 a.m. to say the hamster is back. You can have the purr of the cat and the soulful look of the black dog, the look that says, if I could, I would bite every sorrow until it fled. And when it is August, you can have it August, and abundantly so. You can have love, though often it will be mysterious, like the white foam that bubbles up at the top of the bean pot over the red kidneys, until you realize foam's twin is blood. You can have the skin at the center between a man's legs, so solid, so doll-like. You can have the life of the mind, glowing occasionally in priestly vestments, never admitting pettiness, never stooping to bribe the sullen guard who will tell you all roads narrow at the border. You can speak a foreign language sometimes, and it can mean something. You can visit the marker on the grave where your father wept openly. You can't bring back the dead, but you can have the words forgive and forget, hold hands, as if they meant to spend a lifetime together. And you can be grateful for makeup, the way it kisses your face, half spice, half amnesia. Grateful for Mozart, his many notes racing one another toward joy, for towels sucking up the drops on your clean skin, and for deeper thirsts, for passion fruit, for saliva. You can have the dream of Egypt, the horses of Egypt and you riding in hot sand. You can have your grandfather sitting on the side of your bed, at least for a while, and you can have clouds and letters, the leaping of distances, and Indian food with yellow sauce like sunrise. You can't count on grace to pick you out of a crowd, but here's your friend to teach you how to high jump, how to throw yourself over the bar backwards until you learn about love, about sweet surrender. And here are periwinkles, buses that kneel, farms in the mind as real as Africa. And when adulthood fails you, you can still summon the memory of the black swan on the pond of your childhood, the rye bread with peanut butter and bananas your grandmother gave you while the rest of the family slept. There is a voice you can still summon at will, like your mother's. It will always whisper, you can't have it all, but there is this. Now, I would just, a moment of pity, because you know what it's like to go from that to this, but here we go. Okay, who has my notes? Oh, that's it. That's the missing piece. This is a one of the great, what was it? I was grateful, in a way, in Alabama when I'd been there. I'd been there a little bit, and in fact, my wife Kim and I, before she was my wife, before I tricked her into that, I needed a part for the car, and believe me, I don't know what I'm doing, but I needed a part for the car. And the guy at the car parts store, oh jeez. It's the angle of things. You can't have those, Ken.
Did you bring all your notes from high school?
I didn't take that many notes in high school. Well, you'll hear it in this poem, My Accent. Not a music nor motion of tongue and lips I was born to, more a lilt learned leaning close to blue stories of barnstorm baseball as we ripped out at an hourly wage the kudzu vines that choked the state park in Moundville, taking care to step around the sleepy terrapins. Or maybe as I had lunch in the voices of the crowded city cafe, a short ride over the Black Warrior River, my plate piled with pulled pork, fried okra, corn muffins, and black-eyed peas. Roy Orbison's vibrato on the jukebox, the talk around the tables, all feed stores and first wives. In the hazy town, a car parts store manager could mistake me for a guy working at the tire factory, married to a thin, nervous, smarter woman who yearns to have a baby. A town where the iced tea is always sweet, beer always cheap, and where when a friend said, hey, she meant, hello, how are you? And don't let me keep you. Took me a long time to figure out that how much they pack into the tone of hey. How much is packed into the tone of hey. I never tire of saying or quoting Flannery O'Connor, who, when she was asked, why do you write about so many crazy people? She said, well, that's because in the South, we still know what crazy is. And out in the woods, there was some lady just started pulling together a collection of things. Her name was Ma Seal. This is Ma Seal's Museum of Miscellany. Nothing's funny about amateur taxidermy gone awry. Ma practiced on whatever animal, farm or wild, slaughtered or rifle shot, the day delivered dead to the shed door of her island of Dr. Moreau. She began simple, planted deer antlers into jackalope brow, and progressed over years to turtle dove housed in terrapin shell, the perfect coonhound, a bandit's head tacked to a blue tick, murre woodchuck with lacquered tail of largemouth bass. But she never conquered her craft. A strip of hide lolls from the dairy cow's flank like a tongue. The panther's sunken marble eye stares at constellations etched on the inside of the skull. Stitches give and spill cotton fill. Ingenious she was, she lost passion halfway through the last incarnation, and the rainbow light of a window lined with her antique tonic bottles, the hog, swan, trumpets reaches for flight with one wing. My son, the Houdini. After breakfast, I chain his wrists, ankles, lift and lay him in a casket, kiss his forehead, padlock and plunge the heavy box into the icy river. A minute later, I panic, peel away shoes to dive in as he rises soaked, shivering and beaming on the rocky shore of the far bank. Then he's over the rise to school where board and class he folds in half, again in half, folds with smart creases, folds until he lies on the desktop like a well-worn wallet. His teacher, Mr. Jaybird, opens to find $3 for lunch, a matinee movie stub, and a photo. My boy grins, gives a camera wave. Behind him, hand on his shoulder, all smiles, me, his old man. Will's leaving the house for the second time day after tomorrow, so I thought I'd remember him that way. Don't worry. The notes are fine. It's me. You guys know what shuffleboard is, right? In a bar. It looks a lot like this floor, you know. And there's a couple gutters on the side. I don't know why you need to know that, but I'm glad you do. Now, this is the moon at shuffleboard. The moon, so often busy plying the night sky, steps into the corner pub. We end up playing shuffleboard on the long, blonde grain of a table milled from pine. Everyone else sips warm beer in the smoky air. Young, I practiced the life of a Chinese poet entirely in translation and lay a little drunk in the tall grass of an abandoned olive grove to watch the hill crest glow and grow sharper with backlight, sharper, and then the crickets hushed as she rose, just a wisp of cloud below her like sea foam. To see her step into the olive branches strained my throat, her farther away glancing through the limbs. I slept, woke cold. Soon as I stumbled from the orchard, the moon and I became more comfortable with each other. She watches for me, I think. At shuffleboard, her luminous touch is soft. The game is no challenge for her. I squint, aim, give a gentle push, and my puck flies from the table to gutter. She smiles, takes her turn in a whisper. You'd never guess she pulls tides in the back of her mind. I'd like to read a couple new poems. Are you worried about me? Thank you. You guys were? You wanted to see it. See what happens to this guy. This summer's been taken up at least a pretty good part in the injury a friend sustained in a bicycle accident. The guy is Mr. Safety. And he was just starting down a hill with our friend, his wife, and another couple friends. And it's a freak accident. And he flipped and he cracked the left side of his head and was life-flighted out. And so, you know, he's doing great. In fact, he was supposed to be in the hospital for another month, and he's home, has been home for a month. So And what sustains him, if you ask me, is just his incredible love for people, and which is reciprocal, but also his intense curiosity. Anyway, we didn't know what to make of it because the injury was very severe. In fact, I wrote this poem when I wasn't so sure he'd be with us. Amnesia. The white flash shimmers like a silver gong, settles into a sky of gray gravel, and I don't remember you, your lips, the name you call me when we kiss or cry. Your fingers, two dry twigs across a dumb putty of my cheek. I don't have language or tense, and sleep is not safe. My mind, small sun, pilot light inside the slop of my brain, housed in the machine of the body, could flicker out, and I would walk into a morning glare that blanches the eyes, like I've been up all night and stepped onto the wide plaza of a strange city where children greet me like lost family. And I'm fortunate because I was able to devote quite a bit of time. I mean, I was freed up for it. And he was at Emmanuel Hospital, which is all of 10 minutes from our house. So Kim and I became sort of designated caretakers at a certain time. But there's one of these days I get out and it's raining and I go, how many days have I been here? The year. For a year I lived in the rain, or at or on my way to the hospital to see a friend sleep, at times his eyes wide awake. Maybe now it wasn't a year, but a life, but it was rain, not always a bitter drench, more often kin to a spit or a sally of single warm drops to salt my sleeves and disappear. Each day the portico, pocked by weather and the pull of hidden stars, crumbled by a bit. His tenses were lost. My days became whole as he and I, and he without knowing, waited for nothing. The past wasn't so much locked in a map room down a hidden corridor, but spilled and spoiled like the mush of last season's fallen fruit. The squeeze of a hand, the trace of a smile, the flicker of a lash. We made peace in his white room above the entrance where families wept and mourned the loved ones who would not return, and the year that held us under a sky that reached to the ground in a veil or swelled above us, purple and pulpy as crushed berries, a poultice that could not draw out the hurt. Yeah, I wrote that before I knew it was going to be so darn good. I went in one evening to see him, and it was dusk. I'm kind of giving away the image, which is dangerous, I know, but it was dusk, so there's sort of a green light in there. And to that point, he was that character that I last described. From Gollum to Genie. The wounded, feverish last weeks, you slumped in hospital sheets like a half-finished Gollum fashioned from gray river clay, eyes flickering only to roll away. Now in the green bottle light of dusk you stare ahead, coolly, a mischievous genie, whispering incantations, plotting escape from wrist restraints. So you learn all this new language, and things sort of settle or crash, or you get this word and this word and they crash. Do you guys know where Walt Disney is right now?
Frozen.
Excuse me?
Frozen.
Cryogenically frozen. He's going to come back when they find the cure for whatever he has. At least that's what this poem says. Bone bank. Where's the return on my 401k of calcium, of phosphorus? My friend tumbled, bruised his brain in the freak fall, and the surgeon sawed open his melon to give the pulp room to swell, breathe, and banked the skull flap in deep freeze, a vault away from the ice mummy of Walt Disney. When the time came to heal, to close the transaction, the chilly puzzle piece was stapled back along the seam like a tiny hood over the humming engine of his dreams. Long past the era of giveaway toasters, ball caps, sheets of green stamps, I want to turn the skeleton key to close my account, to withdraw with compound interest the shins of my grandfather, ankles of my grandmother, any stones that became bone, bones that became stone, any relic buried or invisible, the cold coinage of knuckle, the multiplier of marrow. To save, I've deposited both petulance and charm, secured my debts with patience, patience underwritten by water, water underwritten by skin. I'll take for my percentage the dividend, the pale currency of pelvis and clavicle. I've got to let you guys off the hook, but I want to read 2 more poems. Don't worry, I know what it is. And I know where it is. It's from my new friend Greg. Black bead. Hunched like a gray bear over my 10-year-old hand, my father spun in his knobby fingers a drill bit, thin as a toothpick on my bruised thumbnail. In the solitary game where I slammed gray rock against gray rock, the rock all our dry acre had in abundance, I missed on my way to open the color inside, sunrise, ochre, rust, willow green. Under my thumb's clear, fine shell, a thundercloud appeared in the pink sky, a cloud that brooded, but wouldn't rain, only throbbed darker. He never offered what he knew, not the science of winds, not constellations, not the curve of the earth, but he would go quiet, lean in, and try to fix anything. Clumsy about gentleness, silver flashed in his hand. He whispered, "How brave you are," as he churned, then coaxed out the pinhole a first bead of black blood. Yeah, I was brave. Let me read the poem you have in your hands. But first, let me thank you all again. And let me thank the Milwaukie Poetry Series and congratulate you all on what is really very special. And it's been a huge pleasure to participate in it. Oh, and I want to tell you guys, don't speed out on 99. They'll catch you. They'll give you a ticket. Yeah. And don't tell my boy who's sitting back there that I got, well. No, thank you all again. Promise of more. Forever, I thought the freezer would store an ice block or more of smelt, silvery and silver-eyed and solid in half-gallon milk cartons. My parents and aunts and uncles went smelting, wading into the sandy or Clackamas River to dip the long nets into a flashing school. 100 is a good day. And I say without regret, when the season came where the brothers and sisters let pass the radio news that smelt were running and stayed home, old aluminum nets hung in the garage, I never knew I'd miss the fish. Not for the salty bite, not for the crunch of the spine or the cornmeal crust, but because they were on our table in impossible plenitude. And I'd been served my own oily, steaming plate stacked with smelt, with the promise of more if I wanted, and more after that. And the house was a smoky light as it rained the steady rain of a forest, a rain falling softly on all our rivers. Thank you. Do you guys have any questions? Yes, sir.
Two, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
First one is, how did you become passionate for writing poems?
I'm trying to remember. You know, I think when I was in high school, I mean, I think I always had a love of language and story and poetry, although poetry was kind of hard to find, you know. And it wasn't until high school when I started reading some more contemporary stuff, actually. And I actually started having conversations with people who like poetry, that I actually think it's, and I could say this to you guys because you're part of the tribe, it's tribal. And it goes way back, and it'll go way into the future. And it's, you know, if you can share poems with people, which is why these knuckleheads ask us to read them at weddings and funerals. And every time we do that, we kind of broaden the tribe. Okay, so maybe that's it. It was a very. If I was locked in a room, I wouldn't have been a poet. I don't think. I would have been a banker. No, it was also the relationships, the friendships that I've found along the way that are the best people in the world. So I hope that helps.
And my last one is, how long have you been writing poems?
I have to figure out how old I am. I think I first tried, writing poems that I would write and share when I was in high school. That was a means of, saying stuff you couldn't say any other way. It's also a secret language. It can be. It's not something you have to share with anybody. But if you find somebody you want to share it with, and by the way, I want to share it with all of you, it's right. The time is right. Yeah.
You're a comic genius.
I wish I were funnier, but okay. Question? Is that a question or is that a comment?
No, that is.
Okay. But I really do. I look at
Your timing is just very entertaining.
some of that's just reading. That's reading poems well, too. Or trying to, and that's something I very much try to do. I do wish I were funnier, though. I think I used to have funnier poetry. So, I'll see. But thank you. Did you have some?
Who were the contemporaries when you were in high school that you were?
Well, I've read some of them tonight. I mean, we see, when I got to college, and I find this is important to me. When I got to college, I had an inkling of the guy who was writing there because friends of friends knew him, and I read some of his poetry. Gary Thompson, Chico State. I get that Gary's a wonderful poet, a great poet. But Gary had Richard Hugo for a teacher. Richard Hugo had Theodore Redke for a teacher. The friends with Carolyn Kaiser. Went to school with James Wright. And that was the generation that that brought me up. So those are some of the contemporaries. Those people write. And you read James Wright and you read him writing like that. That's tough to ignore. That's tough to call boring. Question was?
Yeah, do you mind talking a little bit about your process of revising your poems or doing the whole drafts? I know that's probably a big question.
You know what, I violated a rule tonight in that I read a couple poems. I'm not sure they're done. You know, and the thing is, a poem that's 3 months old for me, that I've typed up or had on a white sheet for 3 months, that might not be done. And that's awfully. Our friend John had his accident on May 24th, 25th. I'm reading poems that are really fresh. Okay, so that's not their question. Okay, I have 2 notebooks, and I draft over here. You know, the oldest living notebook that I have on the desk. I draft it in the morning. You know, if I'm just trying to write something, and when I'm gonna rewrite that or draft it again, I write it in this one over here, and I go back and forth. So I say, look on page Morrison, look on page 43 for the next draft, and then when I finish it, I go, Morrison, look over on page 28 for the next draft. And I go back and forth. I never lose anything. I never really go back and look at my drafts. I mean, I rarely do. But that, as writing goes, that solves the whole mystery of how do I know I'll lose something, which is a common, you know, people have kind of a fear. I don't want to draft it because I'll lose it. You know, I'll lose the old one. Well, I'll never lose it. Would you like to see my 11th volume of drafts? Much of which is pretty, you know, much of which you don't want to see. I draft and I draft and I get up when I'm writing well, I get up in the morning and I draft back and forth. And when I feel like I've kind of pushed it as far as I can, or lived with it as far as I can, I key it up and either share it with friends, or I might send it out. And then when it comes back, you know, when things come back in the mail, you go, I sent that version out, and then you work on it some more. And that's the one thing, that's the one good thing editors do for us. They send back poems that need to be worked on again so we can see it. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. It sounds like you're busy with the attic and writers in the schools and PCC. Does that make it hard to find time to write? Or does that work really well if you teach?
Check with me in about 6 months. Because I'm about to do more work in the world than I have for a while. And I'm writing up, you know, 3 course outlines and lesson plans, and I haven't been to the desk for like 5 days. So I'm concerned. And who's really concerned is my wife Kim, who's like, aren't you supposed to be writing? So I found when I was working as much as I ever have, I found that if I preserve the first part of the morning before anyone else gets up, just to be at my desk, it's like anything. That's my practice. As long as I'm fulfilling my practice, I'm fulfilling my obligation, and things come to me. Now, it'll slow down what I send out in the mail. It'll send down my administrative or secretarial work. I mean, I don't know how many batches I'll get out to magazines in the next 6 months. I don't. But I very much expect to keep drafting and writing. But I'm a little concerned, and maybe you can help me out somehow. I don't know how, but maybe. You guys, thank you so much for coming.
John,